This is Jazz Jackrabbit. I'm starting off with the DOS version here just to show what it looked like. And I'm actually going to be silent for a little bit just so you can hear all the music and sound here. So as you can see, it's extremely low res. So I'm going to be following this up with a mod that makes it more detailed. But it's pretty low res. You'll run into some issues where you'll get attacked by things you can't see on the screen, which gets frustrating, especially when you're low on health and you'll fall. Like say if there's a bad guy there, which happens in later levels, you'll fall. You won't know anything's there. You'll fall. You'll get hit. Not a lot of skill. It's just it was a limitation of the time. For some reason, the re-release just maintains it all exactly like this. So this is what the base game looks like. This is what you get if you just buy it as it is. And flipping over here, this is the menu for the Open Jazz version, which lets you go to higher resolutions. So this is 1920 by 1080, and right away you can see you get way more screen space. This is actually the 2x scaling option. When it's set to the 1x, it's so small you can't really see what's going on at all. But as you can tell by looking at this, it's obviously going to make the game a lot more playable because, well, first of all, it's easier on the eyes because the resolution's higher, so it's a sharper image. But since you have more screen space, you can plan your routes better. And since the game's made to be high speed because you're Jazz Jackrabbit, you know, he moves fast. When I'm playing the DOS version, just the base, you know, the 320 by 240 or whatever, you know, really terrible resolution it still operates at, you move so fast that you end up, if you don't know the levels, you're gonna have to keep stopping, which kills the speed. And when it's bigger like this, you can just go. So it should have been like this out of the box. And there's a few reasons for that, because number one, it's inconvenient for the consumer to have to buy it and then go and have to do this manual adjustment, which not everyone's going to know how to do. Second of all, there's some issues with this Open Jazz because it's the base version's got its issues, mainly due to the resolution being so small that really hurts the flow of the action. This one has issues of its own, which is, since it's a fan-made thing, there's some glitches. For example, it doesn't use the entire Jazz Jackrabbit sound library, which you won't really notice unless you're like a fanatic, and a lot of fanatics I don't think will notice either unless they're comparing side by side. But it's still an issue. Also, a lot of the bonus stage sounds are just completely dropped. From what I've seen, all I really ever hear is the music track. And then the bonus stages also don't operate, they don't function properly because you don't, for whatever reason, the controls, so on the DOS version when you're running, and if you hit I believe the fire button, you can speed up and then go so fast that you start rolling. The Open Jazz version, when you're in the special stage, it's got like a speed cap. You don't end up being able to go that fast. Which I didn't really find that big of a deal because in the DOS version, when you're going that fast anyway, you're just going to run into something and stop and fall over. So that limitation actually ends up making the bonus stages easier. But yeah, so the bonus stages are missing sound, a lot of sound, and they move slower. Not frame rate slower, just you can't get Jazz moving as quickly as you can in the base DOS version. On top of that, the Open Jazz, which is, you know, you need that to get it to this high res, which makes it look so much better and play so much better. It has CTD issues, like it'll just randomly CTD between levels sometimes, and it's not a reproducible CTD. For example, going from this stage to the next stage, or this stage to the bonus stage, I tried it a couple times. It's like 50-50 if it's gonna crash or not. So if you're using this, you're gonna want to, and I do recommend you use this because it just makes it so much better despite the issues. But like right there, it switched to this fine. Sometimes it'll crash. So you'll want to be saving pretty often, just, you know, whenever you're before doing a stage transition, just in case. So there's a sound issues, there's a CTD issues, and as you can see here, it doesn't move as quickly. This is as fast as Jazz will go, which is, you still have plenty of time. And the last one is the bosses don't always trigger. I'm guessing what it was on the original version. I'm going to guess that the bosses' AI routines would only trigger if you got in a certain proximity. And it would base that based on the screen getting into a certain range, the player's screen. But since this can go higher resolution, it's always activating everything, supposedly. But then I think sometimes it just, like when it loads a stage, it forgets to automatically trip the boss because the boss is already in your screen, and instead of having to get into a certain range to trip it. And this could be, like, this could not be how the original game works at all, right? I'm just saying, based on what I'm looking at with OpenJazz, it seems like that's what's going on. But, so yeah, you're gonna get, the game's way better. Like, despite these issues on OpenJazz, the game's way better because it's high resolution, you can see more. The game's just prettier to look at, even though it still isn't, it's still not a very attractive game. Like, this is still a DOS game, right? It still got blown out of the water by SNES titles. This is very much a poor man's Super Nintendo platformer for PC. That's exactly what it was, because there was Super Turrican, which was way better. There was the Mario games that were way better. Castlevania was way better for graphics and sound. It's like everything, right? Like, this is really just a really watered down version of SNES releases in the same genre, but it still looks better in high res. It's a huge for me. Even though I'm not necessarily like a fan of this game, I'm not really I don't like hate it either. Like, I grew up and I played the shareware quite a bit, because I had that disc with this and One Must Fall and the Android. I'm probably going to do a review of the Epic Pinball collection as well, just for the sake of it, so I won't get into that too much. But I played this quite a bit on the shareware, just because it was like, back then I had Command & Conquer Red Alert, and Doom and Duke Nukem. Those are the big ones I was playing back in those days. And I hunted, Sierra games and stuff. So I had a decent amount to pull from, but you get bored, you want to go play different games. So I played Jackrabbit, and so I have nostalgia for it. But I can admit that this game, it really doesn't hold up that well. And they could have, instead of just re-releasing it when it's been freeware for so long, instead of just taking that and putting a price tag on it, they could have taken that, put a price tag on it, and worked this, not OpenJazz, but they could have done that same thing. They could have said, okay, here it is in higher resolution, and with more options, right? Because OpenJazz also incorporates a co-op feature. It incorporates like a race mode, which I think is just like a time. I haven't looked at it, but what I've read about it, I think it's just like a time trial thing. And then obviously just get the game from them. It's just that low res, exactly what it was, and they could have done a lot more. For the price point, 'cause it's definitely overpriced, and they put no muscle into it. It's just, here you go. So yeah, this is Jackrabbit. I'm trying to think of what else to say here. I did do the first 3 episodes. I did play through the first 3 episodes of this on OpenJazz, which again, it was a bit of a pain due to the CTDs. But it's less of a pain than playing it at the native resolution, which is just garbage. Yeah, there's some other tweaks as well you can do, but they're basically cheat codes. Like, there's something you can do to make it so you can have, right now you can only have, in the base game, you can only have 1 bird partner active at a time. If you want to, in OpenJazz, you can activate it, so you can, however many you pick up is how many you get. But favorite weapon's a standard blaster. You pick up all this other stuff, it's kind of pointless. Score is pointless. Lives are kind of pointless, because what's frustrating about the life system is, yeah, you die and you go back to the checkpoint, but you lose all your power-ups. So if you had a maxed out rapid fire, and you had like just a ton of the additional weapons, you die. You start back at your checkpoint, you lose all of that progress. Which, back in the day, and this again, right, some people will be like, well, that's the way it was, they shouldn't have changed it. Well, I get what you're saying, but I grew up in that era as well, and I think it's something that needs to be. It was just a waste of time. And see, I got lucky with this run, I had no crashes. But it was just a waste of time. It's not a skill factor, it's just an annoyance factor. It's you die, you have all your stuff, and you lose all of it. You're probably going to start over from the beginning. And luckily, each episode is like 15 to 20 minutes long. But it's still a time flush. Like, they should have done more here, especially for the price point. I did look at Jazz Jackrabbit 2 as well, but the only reason I ever played that back in the day was for the co-op, and the co-op wasn't very smooth either. So regardless of what you get here, these are really just two they're games that were, if all you had was a PC, you would have been like, oh, these are pretty good platforming games. But if you compared them to the other, like the actual mammoths of the time, which would have been, you know, Super Mario World, Castlevania 4, Joe and Mac, like all those games were better than anything Jazz Jackrabbit or really anything PC had to offer. Because I know there was Commander Keen as well, and I have nostalgia for that as well, because that was the first PC game I ever played was Prince of Persia, that original one. And then the next one after that was Commander Keen. I don't remember which one it was. I think it was, I'd have to look, but it was an early one, and I didn't even have a sound blaster or a sound card on that PC. So it was one of those things where it was just blips and bloops from the, and not blips and bloops like where NES had like melodic blips and bloops. This was an IBM, and it was literally just, it sounded like mechanical noise from the system. That was the sound effects. That was the music. It was just bloop, 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 like really cheap. And that was my Commander Keen, and I liked it until I got, you know, a normal Nintendo and a Super Nintendo, because I was like, wow, this is actual proper platforming games with a proper sound chip. And even when I got a sound system with a sound card and I revisited Commander Keen, I was like, no, this game still got blown out of the water by, you know, Nintendo titles, first party or third party. Not every single one, but a lot of them. And that's the case with Jazz Jackrabbit 1 and 2 as well. Is they're cool PC nostalgia pieces, but that's all they are. From the gameplay, from the art, from the music, the sound department, they're I mean, I don't want to say piss poor, but they're pretty abysmal. Like they aren't really good games. So that's, well, you know, why you play it, why you document it. Well, for, you know, so I can, whenever I'm wondering, I can just go look back at this and I'll remind myself. And it's a historical thing too, because a lot of people remember this. But just because people remember it and it was something that was good once upon a time doesn't mean it necessarily holds up, which is why I go back to look, because I'm like, I know I used to have nostalgia for this, and I still have some, even though I've played it again, you know, within the last few years before this release. How does it hold up now with what I know and what I've experienced, and, you know, compared to my, you know, other titles of that era? And it doesn't. Like, it's not a good game, because so many mechanics are just unnecessary. Like I said, the score is unnecessary. Blaster's the only one. You die, you lose everything. But they should have had it. They should have had an official high-res thing built into it from the beginning, because it's just at the price point they're selling what should be like at most, because like I said, it's been freeware for so long, and there's gonna be some arguments on that, but it's only an argument if you want to argue. It's not really an argument. Like, it's been freeware for so long. This is not a ROM emulation kind of argument. It's been freeware. It fell out. It fell into the freeware territory, and now they're putting a price tag on it, which is fine, because again, it's their license. If they want to do that, they can. And it's an overpriced price tag, but again, it's their license. They can do that if they want, but it's still, that doesn't mean, I mean, from their perspective, it's good, but if anyone that bought it argues that, like, yeah, so what if I paid a lot? It's their license. Well, that's not, I mean, what are you saying there exactly? If it was like $1 or $2 for what this is, like, then who cares, right? Then who would have cared? But I mean, the sale price even is well beyond what it should have been. Especially considering they did nothing to it. It's in DOSBox. You can already do this for free, so and that's free for now. Like, that may change, because I don't know what's actually going on with the rights of this now, because just because it's getting resold and they're getting royalties, it doesn't always necessarily mean they own the rights to it, which may be why they didn't do anything new to it. But yeah, I want to wrap it up here. So Jazz Jackrabbit, maybe I'll do a video for 2 as well, but I wouldn't recommend either game to anyone unless they get it, you know, free, legally free, or dirt cheap, just to look at for historical value, because the games themselves do not hold up. They aren't good.